Welcome to the Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom for more than 10 years. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I began raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott from the Believe in Dog podcast. For more than 10 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned in case it could help you too. As the Alternative Dog Moms, Kimberly and I are bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and the brilliant people we're meeting along the way. Now let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
So I'm not recording in my usual place today. I'm all out of sorts.
It's very confusing. I am recording in my normal place, but thankfully the dogs are quiet and we have an AC unit in here and it's crazy loud. So it's going to be a 90-degree day. So I turned it off temporarily while we record.
I did the same thing.
And then I'm kicking it right back on. Oh, it's going to be miserable.
Yeah, hopefully we're not going to pass out from heat stroke. Because it's like 95 degrees here today. And I haven't been able to walk dogs in the morning. Like yesterday we went out and it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and poor Nino, he's my old guy. And he was like really struggling like the last, block or so. And I was like, I know, dude, like we're almost home. And, he's so cute. He'll just like stop and be like, I'm just going to like sniff this spot. It's like really interesting. And you can just see he's like, oh my God, I just need a minute. And I'm like, all right, dude, like, let's do it. But we just walk real slow. I was like, oh, my poor old man, like, we'll have to take the rest of the week off. This morning, we just did some nose work around the house because I was like, yeah, this poor dude, he's not going to make it around the block today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just after we finish here, I'm going to take, I took Zoe and Bella out for a little bit, but I usually, because I don't take them on the trail, I take them and we loop the property 2 times. And I'm hoping that it'll still be, I mean, they're pretty good in the grass and stuff. I mean, they can be out I let them go out for 15 and 20 minutes, in the 80s. And it's definitely not going to be that hot yet. But we have to do our loops around the house. And then I'm hoping that the house stays cool enough because the room that I work in doesn't have AC. And so it's sort of hopefully comes through the door from the other rooms. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, we're having a little bit more of backyard drama. So a couple nights ago, Tim went outside and he's like, comes back in, he gets me and he's like, did one of the dogs like start digging this hole? And I'm like, not that I would imagine. Would be very unusual for our dogs unless they specifically saw something there that they wanted, and they're not hole diggers. So he kind of put the grass back that had been dug, and we didn't think anything further of it. And then last night, Tim went to cut the lawn, and right by the entrance to our shed, there was like another even bigger hole dug. And he realized there's 3 baby rabbits in the hole.
Oh.
So, yeah, it must have been Mama Rabbit digging the holes. And it has all this like fur mixed in with the grass that had been dug up.
The nest.
And you could see the little baby. I didn't go out there. So he called our neighbor over. They were having this whole meeting about what to do. So we're leaving it alone for now. We don't want to, relocate the babies. And they actually have a little bit of fur on them, but they don't have their eyes open yet. And there's 3 of them, and they're very like wiggly. And the only good thing is that Daisy girl does not tend to go over to that side of the yard for whatever reason. She gets obsessed with the other side of the yard. And so she hasn't realized they're there yet. But we're just so paranoid. We might just have to take her out on leashes in the backyard because, I'm really not trying to have like a rabbit massacre in my backyard. But I'm just like, rabbits, come on.
I know, it's like, do you just not have any sense of self-preservation at all?
And so Tim's going to try to use some chicken wire to then that was our dilemma, right? Like, we think that they get in where, like, our gate and our fence are. And so we were trying to decide if we should use chicken wire to kind of prevent that. But given the mama rabbit situation,
Hmm.
we don't want to lock her out of being able to get to her babies. I don't know if they have another way in or not. We're going to have to just observe more. But I have not even seen a rabbit in our yard since the one that was killed a couple weeks ago. So it's like, what is happening? Please, rabbits, please stay out of my yard. I'm not trying to have, the circle of life happen.
I've been we have rabbits, but they have been pretty good at staying invisible from the dogs. They've even managed to stay out of the dog yard for the most part this year, because they do they come in at night, and I know where they come in through, and they just I guess hop around, poop here and there, and then leave. But it's just sort of like, at least they're smart enough not to come out during the day, and it cracks me up because they'll just freeze as if, if I stay really still, no one can see me.
Yeah, and it
It's
works sometimes.
And it's just like, my dogs, when they're in the house, they're just going crazy because they've caught sight of a rabbit, and I have to go outside, and I just sort of clap my hands. It's like, nope, keep going. It's
Yeah.
just like, I need you to stop. But yeah, we didn't. Luckily, we haven't had any baby rabbits. We have had baby rabbits, but we haven't had any baby rabbit fatalities this year. So.
I hope to say the same thing. I told Tim I'm really not into the whole prey model of
Yes,
feeding.
exactly. It's like I can do prey model, but I don't the whole live kill aspect.
Yeah, I
That's
don't need
that's
that.
not part of it. That's something different. I'm not that natural.
Yeah. I'm not the girl who's gonna, like, drag a roadkill out of the yard.
Yes, no, that's not. No, I buried a rabbit actually. It wasn't my dogs that got it though, but I buried a rabbit a week ago, and Bella found the rabbit, thankfully, and she's really easy to call off of things. And then she found the hole that's probably a coyote dug up to get to the rabbit. So they finished it off. It's like, it's fine. It's like, I wish you would have finished it off the first time instead of leaving that mess for me to have to deal with. It's just like I don't like that part.
Dogs. So, Kimberly, our guest is here.
Yay.
We have the esteemed and pioneering veterinarian, Dr. Margo Roman. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on. And maybe we can learn a bunch of stuff from each other and share stuff with the audience.
That sounds great. Now, we always love a good origin story. And so I'm always curious, were you somebody who always wanted to be a veterinarian from a little girl?
Yes, from the time I was like 3, I told my parents I wanted to be an animal doctor. And so in some ways, it was really a way to focus my life and start learning very early. But it's rare that somebody sticks to what their dream was. And so I was very, very lucky. And by doing that, it made me focus in school that I couldn't goof off and not get good grades. I had to, because it was so hard back then. Women were not veterinarians. That was not a field for women. It was not a field at all. And actually, when I applied to undergrad, I applied to Cornell as an undergrad and to veterinary school. And the letter they wrote me was the only reason I wanted to go to vet school was to find a husband who was a veterinarian. And I took that letter, and I wish I had kept it. It would have been worth a fortune. But I ripped it up into the tiniest little pieces, and I said, can't believe they said that to me. But it was, they used to take one token woman in
Yeah.
each class, and that was a problem if women were going to get ahead in veterinary medicine. And so many women were the compassionate, mothering, caring types, and it was surprising that it was considered a male career, and it was not a women's career. And so, I ended up going to Tuskegee in Alabama, and they had always taken at least 15% women. So they were always ahead when it came to including women. So that was part of it, but they just didn't want women in the field. They just felt they would get pregnant, have kids, and use of so small a number of spaces in that because there were only 15 vet schools at that time in the country. So if they were going to take a spot and then not work, that was going to leave more of a deficit for veterinarians. So.
I'm like nearly speechless hearing that, especially considering I think today it's primarily women who
Yeah,
enter
it's about
vets.
90% women. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many of the schools. So it's the males are the minorities in this field. And I think women make great veterinarians. I just wish there were more that were more holistic from their heart and not so sold to, being a pharmaceutical rep, pretty much.
Yeah.
It needs to evolve. And I think veterinarians, once they understand integrative medicine and understand the other options that they have, then the thing that really is damaging to veterinarians is this compassion fatigue. So if you're having to tell an owner you can spend $10,000 for surgery or $30 for chemotherapy, and there's nothing in between that can be more holistic, and you put the animal to sleep because they don't have that kind of money to do it. And you can still get high quality of life with alternative, which is not as expensive. And so that's where a topic, we're getting way off topic here, but is the spectrum of care. And that's a new term that the veterinary schools are starting to utilize because they use as an example, a person comes in with a 12-year-old dog that has rotted teeth and has bad liver enzymes and has a heart condition and has bad skin and has an ear infection. And they come in, and to do all of the diagnostics in the most standard of care, which is ultrasounds and biopsies and cultures and sensitivity and doing all that, could run $3,000 before you even do the teeth. And then you do the x-rays in the teeth. And so another $1,200, $2,000. And the people have $500. Well, what do? Euthanize the dog. And that to me is unacceptable. I'm sorry. If you can help that animal and give it more longevity and not have to have every single I dotted before you go ahead and do something, because that's a lot of my clients that I don't have the money to go do an EKG and an ultrasound. And by the time you get into a specialist, it could be, a month later. And meanwhile, the dog is suffering with these bad teeth. So anyway, but the spectrum of care is getting filtered through. And what I want to do is to get them to include integrative medicine in that spectrum. So there's a prism of light that has all these different things that they can do. They can get acupuncture for the liver and for the ears. They can have, ozone flushes of the ears. They can have ozone and UVBI, which are not as expensive as, liver biopsies and everything else. And to support it and do the right nutrition and fresh food. And of course, I'm really big on the microbiome. And I think that to me it should be at the base of everyone's choices, is using their microbiome and the differential of the microbiome from healthy animals.
I think the microbiome, I love that it's become such a common thing. I'm excited that I have yet to see too many scams revolving around the microbiome, because usually when something becomes popular, that's when the scammers jump into it.
Let's hope.
And I'm hoping that, that they stay away from this one, because it is so very important. When the last dog that I lost, or not the last dog, but Scout, I lost him a few years ago to lymphoma. And when we went to his holistic vet, the first thing she wanted to do was test his biome and to see what was going on. And she was stunned because it was so spot on healthy that nothing stuck out. But I was most impressed by the fact that that was the first place she wanted to go. Like, if we're going to do anything, let's find out where we are. And that helped her figure out, okay, well, then this is the direction we're going to go.
So the issue right now, and I'm very love that we're doing testing. I love it because it's going to give us more knowledge. But where we are in testing is a drop in the bucket. If there are 400 to 700 species in the mouth, which is what they're saying, and we can do the 16S next generation sequencing, which is between 35 and 100 species, we know this much, right?
Yeah.
So, we didn't know this much 10 years ago, right? So as we learn more and figure out where all these species are and how they interrelate with each other, we have an opportunity to even know more information. And if we look at the spectrum of care and we say, what this spectrum of care, how can we be efficient with this spectrum of care? Getting a fecal transplant from donors that have been protected for 30 years, 7 generations, like my dogs are, why not start with that? Like, before you spend thousands of dollars in trying to test this and test that and biopsy this intestine and biopsy that, just be able to give them the microbiome from really healthy donors. And I think the other part of this is what I think is why I coined the word microbiome restorative therapy and not FMT, is that you just can't throw poop at it and see, oh, it's going to stick. You got to develop the internal terrain of the gut and get the animals on a healthier diet so that the diet will maintain these guys. If you do a fecal transplant and then you put them on commercial food that's full of glyphosate, Roundup, chemicals, preservatives, and pesticides and all that, you're going to knock that stuff out. It's not going to want to survive because that's what probably knocked it out of its great-grandmother, you know? It just killed it and then never got to the mother and never got to the baby. So you've got to go back and, you know, people say, well, it's too expensive to buy, organic food. Well, you'll pay for it on the other side of it, with trying to keep gathering them up underneath.
So, I was thinking to myself, most of us spend our whole lives like trying not to touch poop. So, when did you realize that, like, oh, this is actually something that's a really powerful healing tool?
Well, you guys are asking really actually good questions. So, in veterinary school, I had a serious accident and I almost died. I got thrown against a fence. The farmer was too cheap to put in fencing, so he put in 5-inch nails through planks. So they were sticking out close to 5 inches through 1,000 of them in this pen. And I was a senior student going to give the medication to my classmates who were treating a cow. And the door was off the hinge, so I had to lift up the door and lift it up and then drag it open and then pull myself in. And then that's how you got into this thing. So I had all the medications and I get in there, I look around and see all these nails and I go, somebody's going to get killed here. This is like a torture chamber. And the door had nails going this way and that way. So there were probably 100 on the door. And I turned around, all of a sudden the cow is charging. And I thought, if I go to the door and by the time I lift that door up, move it over and put it down, she will have smashed me against 100 nails. So I thought the best thing for me to do is gently lean into the chute, let her go by me. And she did just that. And she ran into the door, impaled herself. But as she passed me, how cows walk, they throw their hips, they sort of wiggle, her hips pushed me into the nail and the nail went through my back, hit my pericarp, missed my heart by 1/8 of an inch and hit my sternum. And I was impaled on the nail. Wow. So I ended up, it's a very long story. Long story short, I went to a hospital. They misdiagnosed me. They said it was my spleen. I kept arguing with them. They took my totally normal spleen out and left me with a paralyzed diaphragm. And I had to have thoracic surgery. They looked at the x-ray and they said it was cancer. And that was 48 years ago. So I have a mistrust of the medical profession because they were so off and I should have died twice with them. And if it was because I was so determined that this you're not right. This is in my chest. I know where it is and they wouldn't listen. Meanwhile, I lost my spleen. Meanwhile, I was told by the best infectious diseases at Tufts University and Brigham and Women's Hospital, I should never touch animals again, or I stay on antibiotics the rest of my life. So I stayed on antibiotics for 7 years because I didn't want to give up. I love working. And I ended up teaching anatomy at Tufts for 7 or 8 years because I didn't want to be around bacteria. So they said, this is so ironic, do not touch feces. Do not touch raw meat. Do not touch dogs' mouths. So how do you practice like that so I lived in latex gloves. I feel like I was in latex all day long. And I was on antibiotics for 7 years. And then I was so sick from being on antibiotics. I was constantly getting vaginal infections and I was getting angioedema. I would be lecturing And all of a sudden, I was teaching at Tufts. I was lecturing, and all of a sudden my lip would just go like this. I'd be like this, and then my ear would swell up, and my whole head would look like it was falling over, like the Incredible Hulk. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And so the long story is I started using integrative medicine, acupuncture, and homeopathy, and got off all these medications. And I became healthier because I was touching bacteria, and I was utilizing bacteria. And I kept saying, but I shouldn't have to live on antibiotics. And so some of the animals that I was caring for were doing the same thing. It's got diarrhea. You got to keep it on metronidazole its whole life. And I read an article about a guy who did a fecal transplant on a woman who had Clostridium difficile. This was in probably 2006 or so. And I had been protecting my dog's flora because I always had used probiotics, digestive enzymes, and I knew it wasn't good to be on antibiotics. So I had been, just keep my dogs on a healthier, fresh diet, and was doing the raw diet, and realized that, they're doing it for people for Clostridium difficile, and dogs eat poop anyway. So why don't I give them a good poop from a healthy dog that hasn't been tainted with all these stuff? So I did my first one in 2012. I dared myself for like a year or two, and it was a perfect case, and it was a miracle. And the next one I did was a miracle, and the next one I did was a miracle. And I was like, oh my God, something as simple as dog poop is going to help these animals get better. And in combination with medical ozone, it potentiated it. And that's what I think is really important, that you have to have the ozone therapy with it, because ozone kills the biofilm and then helps increase the healthier microbial diversity, as well as it stimulates stem cells. And when you do the rectal ozone prior to the fecal transplant, you're knocking out that biofilm. You're stimulating in the crypts of the colon are these columnar cells, and at the base of them are their stem cells. And so if you're doing their stem cells and you're utilizing their stem cells, those pick up the ozone and get really active. So you're regenerating new intestinal cells. And then the rest of it is absorbed through the colorectal vein, and it gets into the liver, and it helps detox the animal. So the three pieces of that make the fecal transplant so much better. And then adding nutraceuticals and nutrition to it so that these microbial come into that environment and go, oh, this is great. I could live here. This is like really, a cozy place. And oh, look at all these guys I know already. We're all friends here, right? So that's the whole piece, is that it's got to be the package. It's not just throwing the poop at it.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because my thought was, because there are a couple of companies that offer the poop pills.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's some that you can get from raw fed dogs and some that you can get from kibble fed dogs. And I know that a lot of people will hear that this is something that is beneficial and just spend their money on that, not realizing that there are more pieces to the puzzle.
Oh, I think to be successful, you need the puzzle pieces to help you. If you have a simple case, I think that's fine. So if you have a really simple diarrhea case, fecal transplants are easy peasy, But if your case is complicated and they have immune endocrine imbalance, or they've had lots of antibiotics, or have been on Apoquil, or all these immune suppressive things that are there, they need more than that. And that's when going to a good holistic vet who is trained in these things can really shorten that poor dog's suffering and cat suffering, because they can just move ahead of it, get all the nutritional things they need to prepare that microbiome for success, utilize the ozone, utilize some of the other techniques. Dr. Jill Rubin and I where's the book? We just finished a new book, which I can, on my desk somewhere, or maybe it's behind me. We just finished this book, and it's going to be out at the AHVMA convention.
Oh, wow.
So you see reverse. But it's and it's got a whole section on the microbiome. And I'm just finished writing a book on the microbiome, which is at the editor right now, and I hope to have it out in a few months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so this one's going to be about 400 pages, and the other, mine's like about 500 pages now. But I'm going to try to cut it down and put the cases on my website, so that I don't think people are going to be able to read the lab results, because it's going to be too small of a. Otherwise, it'll be 1,000 pages. I don't know. So anyway.
So my dog Penny is actually a success story for the ozone and the microbiome
Oh,
slurry.
great. Oh, tell me Penny's story.
So in 2019, when the animal biome tests, or that was when I first became aware of the animal biome tests for fun, because that's the kind of stuff I do. I had sent her poop in to be analyzed, and it wasn't bad. Uh, and then she had a series of UTIs, and I think she ended up having like 4 rounds of antibiotics in a year. And then she started getting the pododermatitis, the feet
Hmm?
that were so bad that, I mean, it was like huge draining tract sores up her legs and things. And so finally, we made our way to the veterinarian we work with now, and she actually used her own dog's poo to do a fecal transplant with ozone, because she had been learning from you. And
Great.
after, I think we did one, and she within weeks was looking better, and then we did a second one, and she did great for years after that until she passed away of something completely unrelated.
Aw. Well, that's great. And it just that it's so simple. And all conventional vets can do this. I mean, finding holistic vets that can really navigate with herbs and nutrition in a way that is not just prescribing a commercial dog food, but feeding a fresh food that has, live enzymes in it, and live food is really, how I think you're going to solve the problem much faster and more efficiently for the pet parent. It's really important.
I think it's frustrating when you feel like she's on a fresh food diet. I thought we were doing all the right things and this still happened. But when we did the animal biome test after the 4 rounds of antibiotics, it was shocking how horrible it was.
Right before. Yeah. So again, we know a little bit, and we can see if we see these changes, it gives us encouragement to keep doing other things, checking it for other things. So my hope is that, you may be able to use the microbiome to test for everything.
Mhm.
It's 80% of your immune system, and they learn what each of these species have in their interrelationship with each other, you know, to be able to know all that stuff, which there's a company called Biome, which I just got there. I had gotten tested by them, like, I want to say 4 years ago. And they take your blood, your saliva, and your fecal, and you do it yourself. You prick your finger and you send it in, and they analyze all of it, and then they put their algorithms, and they tell you what foods you should eat, what foods you shouldn't eat, what probiotics you need. So I haven't done that for like 4 years because I've been taking their stuff, but I need to do it again. So I'm going to probably be doing it sometime this week. But again, what they know now and what they knew 4 years ago is a huge difference. So they may find a bunch of stuff that I'm really deficient in, and I need to, be taking that along with whatever I'm doing.
Why is there such a disconnect with quote unquote mainstream medicine and not understanding, how glyphosate affects us, how, what
Well,
we have all.
part of it is a big part of it is that these pharmaceutical companies have so much power over the American Veterinary Medical Association, the veterinary boards, the veterinary schools. They fund them. And so if they're making products that have these in them and they're making money on them, do they want to question them? And that's why they keep attacking me, because I question it. And I feel like you want to do the best for your patient, not the best for the pharmaceutical companies. So it's hard because if you're trained in veterinary school by pharmaceutical companies and they fund the schools, it's hard to get independent thought within a school. And I've seen that from Tufts University. So, and I've stood up to Tufts and they can't stand it that somebody would think differently. So it's hard. It's hard, my feeling is you see something, you need to say something. You
Mhm.
don't just sit there and say, well, it's not my place. And I've never thought that it wasn't my place to speak out. And, and it's hard because I don't know if your group, you might know because I've spoken, but I'm going to the Supreme Court of the United States. We're filing at the end of this month. And it has been $1 million of my own money spent to defend the right to practice veterinary medicine, and use my veterinary oath. And if I would love everybody else to support me. I just put a change.org on just now, like earlier today. Karen Becker said, "Why aren't you on change.org?" I was like, okay, and send it around. And then I have a give, send, and go, but it's my own, it's my retirement. It's really hard to do this by yourself. And we need everybody to help us because I love my dogs. And I'm sure everyone that's listening to your podcast feel the same way about their own animals in their home. They're part of your family. And if I have to do something to them, I'll just use 2 examples right now, just to my own dogs, just in the last 3 weeks. Eliza, I saw her cough and I thought she might have inhaled something. And then 2 days later, she's coughing and coughing and coughing. And I thought, oh gosh, did she aspirate? Did she do something like that? So I did some conservative stuff, some ozone at home and all that. And then I sent her to the clinic. I said, I'm going to get a chest film. So we did a chest film and she had aspiration pneumonia. What would she have been done to her if she went to any other veterinary clinic? She would have been put on at least 2 antibiotics, possibly a transtracheal aspirate. Okay. And her white cell count was 31,000. So she was showing an infection. She wasn't acting sick and she wasn't running a fever, but she had a cough and you could hear a wet cough. So I did ozone, I did UVBI, I did some herbs that were for the lungs. I gave her standard process pneumotropin PMG. I did a little bit of acupuncture on her. And in about 5 days, she seemed better. About a week after, I took the blood work, totally normal. X-ray is totally normal. So if I had taken her to any other vet, they would have put her on antibiotics, right? So, and then at about the same time, I have 8 dogs and 4 were in heat at the same time. So there was a little skirmish, between them, someone trying to jump on somebody. And my littlest one who's sitting over here, she's little and they overwhelm her, right? And so they jumped on her and, she screamed and I could see her pull away and pull her leg away. So whether she twisted her knee and she was limping after that. So I thought did she get a bite wound? And I looked around, I didn't see a bite wound, but I thought I felt some moisture on her knee. And so I just started her on ozone. I took her in for UVBI and, all of my dogs are positive for Lyme and because up here, everybody's positive, but I don't, I've never treated my dogs with antibiotics. They don't have any symptoms. So if she was limping, and I did not see that happen, she went to the veterinary clinic. They took a Lyme test on her and she was positive. She would have been on antibiotics for a month. Okay. And been on antibiotics for a month. So a week and a half go by. She still, she stopped limping for a little bit and then started limping again. And I said, let's get an x-ray. So the x-ray came back, was it like 5 days ago? And they said, oh, she's got a cruciate injury. So I did acupuncture with Moxa at home on her and ozone, and she's totally sound on the leg now. So she would have been 2 weeks ago, if I'd seen her limping, gone to the vet, been positive for Lyme, put on doxycycline for a month, and the other one would have been probably put on Baytril and Clavamox to cover aspiration pneumonia. And my dogs, I haven't used antibiotics on them in 30 years because I have other tools that I can use. And by doing that, we're hopefully preventing the animal from getting a dysbiosis and weakening their immune system. We're like checking off all these species that are being damaged by the antibiotic use.
We actually just did an episode about treating CCL tears without doing surgery. So, yeah, prolozone is actually a treatment for that also.
Absolutely. And I would have gone to the next step was that. But with the acupuncture, because I taught the prolozone courses. And so, I was going to do that, but I thought I can do acupuncture mox at home and I could do, prolozone at home too. But I thought, well, let me first start with that because that's what I did for years. And then when I started teaching the prolozone course, I said, I started doing that on the dogs and I was getting dogs that were scheduled for surgery, and did the prolozone and that, solved it. So to me, if you don't offer that, you are not being fair to the client. And I'll tell you a case that really, rubs me the wrong way is I had this English bulldog who was beloved by one of my clients. Loved this dog. He was such a cool dog, and she was so holistic herself, very like a medical intuitive almost. But she was so good, and he injured his cruciate, and I did prolozone on him and ozone and everything, and he was fine for 3 years. 3 years later, she had moved about an hour further away from me, and she went to a local vet, and he said, "The dog's got a cruciate. You got to do surgery." She said, "Well, last time that my vet diagnosed it, I did ozone therapy and prolozone and acupuncture and chiropractic." And he told her, "That's not going to work. You have to get surgery right away." So she's very wealthy, so she doesn't have to look around where she has to go. So she goes to a surgical hospital with a board certified surgeon, and they get her in the next day, right? They get her in the next day, and she gets in there, and this is a bulldog, which is an anesthetic risk, A. B, the dog's never been under anesthesia. So she brings the dog in, they do the surgery, and they can't seem to stabilize the dog. So they told her to come get the dog. So she comes in, and the dog is still having problems breathing. They kept adding a different drug, and another dog's never had drugs. It's been holistic. So they kept adding more drugs to it and everything else. And they told her, take the dog home. And she picks up the dog, and she says, "He's not right." But she takes him home, and she's home for a short time, and she says, "He's not right. I got to bring him back. He's not right. He's not right." So she brings him back, and she's in the waiting room, and she said, he's and so the surgeon comes out and berates her and said, "He's fine. Just take him home." She said, "He's not right." Doesn't he die in the waiting room?
Oh my God.
Die in the waiting room, right?
That's heartbreaking.
And was this an emergency? No. Could she have had the other thing done? Yes. Had it worked for her before? Yes. Did they even know about it? No. They were not interested in it. They were going to do surgery. And they did surgery, and her dog died. And I was, because I was attached to this dog a lot because I saw it for years. I was so upset. It's like, what do you do? If the reverse was, and I did something like that, the board would slit my throat, right? If I had done, fact that they pushed them to do it and pushed them and said, "This has got to be done right. You do this right away." To me I can't call it malpractice, but if you don't offer somebody something else, if I don't offer them surgery as an option, then I'm at fault. If they don't offer you the other, they should be at fault as well.
Well, you bring up something that we talk about a lot on our podcast, which is, we're not veterinarians, we're pet parents, but we pay attention to these things. We want what's best for our dogs. We know that there are a lot of tools outside the mainstream medicine toolbox, but we often feel pressure and get those messages, and it's communicated to us, "Oh, we're not a vet, we don't know, there's no research behind that, that's woo woo," or you might even have a spouse or parent or somebody in your life who's like, "Well, you're not a vet, you can't make these kinds of decisions."
Well, listen, I'm a vet, and they say that to me. So, you're a vet, but we don't believe what you're talking about but when you see it in your hands, unless I'm just lucky, when I just get cases that are lucky, and maybe it is all luck, but it's too ironic, that you do acupuncture on an animal that's paralyzed and is told by the university the only thing you could do is back surgery at $6,000. And that was almost over 25 years ago. And you do acupuncture and the dog walks, is when you went back to the school, they said it could have spontaneously happened. Well, why didn't you tell the owner it could spontaneously happen, that it would walk again in an hour? To me, I sort of try not to try to put the piece onto them because I thought I could gently educate them with information. It hadn't worked that way. So that's why I've taken it to the legal level. And now we're at the Supreme Court because you can keep hitting your head against the thing going, can you look at this case? And they're like, well, it could have happened anyway. Well, so could the antibiotics. You gave the antibiotics. It might have happened without the antibiotics too. But you haven't looked at that. And meanwhile, you're causing severe dysbiosis and you're causing a problem, and especially in dentistry. When they automatically put the animal on clindamycin, that is not good because one course of clindamycin can knock your microbiome out for an entire year and you may never get it back. And so these dentists that tell you got to put your dog on antibiotics, we use ozone throughout our dental, flushing the pockets, flushing the mouth, flushing it. And then, and then sending the owner home with ozonated oils to put on the gums to soothe them instead of putting them on a systemic antibiotic, which is causing gut dysbiosis. We've got you guys, I'm going to try to get the health coaches to sort of speak up and talk about this because it gives you an opportunity to talk about something that the American Veterinary Medical Association has put front and center, which is antimicrobial resistance. And what can we do to enhance the use, to enable antibiotics to work? They're not working now. They're almost useless. They're actually sometimes negative. So if veterinarians are pulling them off the shelf because that's what they know how to do, they actually are causing harm. And that's not a good thing. So we need to be giving them more opportunity and having people trained like you guys are being trained to be coaches. They need to respect what your information is. If they don't want to learn it, they don't want to know it, they are missing opportunity to help their patients, and their goal should be to help their patients.
And we had Jonathan on from O3 Vets, and I know he was inspired to start his whole company from working with you.
Oh, yeah. But I kept encouraging him, we've got to have a veterinary, we have to have a veterinary support group, or veterinary, business with ozone because nobody had started that. And yeah, Jonathan started and he really did a great job starting it. And then now he's, focusing on educating the pet parents and stuff, which I think is really important because if you can do a lot of stuff at home, why wouldn't you? I use my ozone generator all the time, not only for the animals, I use it for myself, but I also use it to if I want to make ozonated water and clean something, up, I can make ozonated water and use it as a cleanser, to clean a surface from bacteria, and that's part of what the board is going after me because prior to the shutdown of COVID, I was using medical ozone to sterilize PPE. And so at the time, our PPE, we were told in Massachusetts, give up all your PPE to the hospitals. People do not have to wear masks. Only doctors wear masks. And I'm immune compromised because I got my spleen out. I have a paralyzed diaphragm. And I've been in a mask on a plane for my entire life. Well, as a veteran, since that happened. So I'm not going to give up my PPE to them. I need to reuse it. So I was re-sterilizing it with ozone. And I put that out in a private email to my clients in March of 16th, 2020, before anyone else had put out any information. Because in the early mid-90s, I got trained in bioterrorism preparedness and was considered the expert after 9/11 in Massachusetts. So I knew how to get going. Like, let's not sit like deer in the headlights. Let's be proactive. So I was proactive and mentioned getting an ozone generator to sterilize your PPE. And I also mentioned about a cat that I treated in 2004, and the whole cattery died. There were 30 cats, and they said they thought it was coronavirus, but nobody had a PCR. But everybody was dropping dead. And the one kitten I treated survived and was better in 2 days and lived to 17. So to me, ozone was a possible cure for coronavirus. I said that in an email to my private clients, and they took my license for 2 years for practicing out of the scope of veterinary medicine by mentioning ozone. So that's why I'm at the Supreme Court, because here I had something that was eventually peer-reviewed and proven, but they would not even look at it. As soon as I said anything alternative, if I had said to them, I got the cat vaccinated for coronavirus and told people to get vaccinated for coronavirus, they would have said zero. The fact that I said I use ozone to kill the virus and it stimulated their immune system, I was recommending something to people so I was malpracticing. Or I was practicing out of the scope of veterinary medicine. And veterinary medicine, we are trained to be zoonotic stewards. And we need to understand how things can affect interrelationship of animals and humans. And that's what I was doing. And you can't do that in Massachusetts because their excuse was, we do not believe in the veterinary oath. And I'm like, then what do we have if we don't have an oath? And they're like, well, we don't believe in the veterinary oath. So that's the reason I'm going to Supreme Court.
Well, I'll make sure that we have links. Yeah, links to support you. We'll include the links in our chat.
Yeah, so if you can do links to support it, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something on change.org, and then there's Give, Send, and Go. When do you expect this to be shown?
Next week.
Great, because we were trying to get signatures in by the 20th of August, so we may have a little bit of time. But I think for all of you pet parents out there, please get educated. Don't go blindly without knowing information. And with the internet, there's a lot of stuff that may not be accurate, but there are good sites that have lots of information. Karen Becker and Judy Morgan and Ruth. Your group has great information too. And then knowing that you have veterinarians that are part of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, and people can go to the ahvma.org or to Chi University or to the VBMA or to the AVH, are people that are practicing this, and at IVIS, which is the International Veterinary Acupuncture Society. There's a lot of different modalities that finding a veterinarian that has had some training in these would be a wonderful way to partner. And, and those of you that are coaching, to find those people that have already the open mind, and then go to the conventional ones and introduce yourself and sort of show the things that you're doing. And if you have somebody who says, well, I don't believe in that stuff, and I'm sorry, I can't recommend you, just say, I'm sorry, your loss, your client's loss, the poor animal's loss, but the animal can't say anything.
Yeah. It's just shocking because, I mean, as scientists, I always think of people who have that brain are constantly looking for answers and constantly digging. And we all
Well, that's how I feel like I feel like I know this much.
Yeah.
And I know this much.
Just historically, we
think I know this much, and then I know this much, and then I know this much.
We can think about what we've learned just over the past few hundred years. I mean, there was a time, when women would give birth and they kept dying, and then they figured out maybe we should wash our hands.
Exactly.
And even that, they got pushback on that. That's just ridiculous. But it's just like, but now we're washing our hands all the time. And it's just, it's interesting to me that there are people who would allow, whether it be, money or, prestige, to stand in the way of advancing the knowledge of and being able to help people. Because it's like a lot of these people, I think the one difference between medical, human medicine and animal medicine is that so many people go into animal medicine for a genuine love of animals. And it's sort of like, at what point in time during your journey did the pharmaceutical companies trump your love of animals?
You got it right there. They go in, at least I thought, I mean, there were people in my class that I don't think liked animals. I think they belonged in my class, right? But the most of us that were in the class, they really cared about the animals. I mean, I did. I went there because I wanted to help animals. But there were people that were there because their father had been a veterinarian and they wanted to be a veterinarian. And there were people there that thought it was be a good, income. And, but if you have some, and I kept hoping with all the women that went into veterinary medicine that there would be that kind of love, compassion piece of it. But when you get in there and they convince you that it has to be evidence-based medicine, it's got to be proven, it's got to be data, it's got to be this. You give them the data, it's not good enough. It wasn't published in the AVMA journal, so therefore we don't accept it. So unless you jump and you realize that so many of the journals are funded by pharmaceutical companies, you realize that everything is tainted in a way that is to their benefit. And, I've tried to have articles put into the AVMA journal on microbiome in 2015. They had nobody to peer review it. They had nobody to even discuss it. They didn't know what I was talking about, right? And I tried for 3 years. I ended up having it published in a human journal because I felt like this, AVMA is just won't even talk. Now they're publishing them on microbiome, but that's 10 years later.
Yeah.
So they're publishing it. But, anything that was holistic was discounted at our mainstream journals.
No.
They were like, if it has something about homeopathy in it, you can't put it in there because we aren't trained in it, and we're told that it's foo-foo.
Yeah.
And it has no.
What's interesting is how comfortable some veterinarians are just stating without evidence that there is no evidence. I responded to a veterinarian a few years ago who did an entire video about Dr. Becker. And I'm watching this video, and as I'm watching, I'm like, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. So I restarted the video and started writing down timestamps of all the places where she was incorrect. And I left a comment saying, just with half of them, here's the study that supports acupuncture. Here's a study that supports, and it's like, and I'm like, this is just one of many studies. And I'm explaining all of this, and I ended up writing an entire article that detailed all of that. And
That's good for you.
her response was simply, I think, she had one first of, well, I'm sure you're a fan of hers, and so you're going to, it was just very dismissive, and it's easy to look up blog posts, and I'm like, for a fact that these are not blog posts. You can see by the URL that this is a scientific study, but she was so dismissive. And reading the other comments of people, saying, oh, thank you so much for clarifying this. And and when it came down to it, I don't even know if this person was really a veterinarian. She just had the outfit.
White coat, yeah.
Yeah, she had that, she had the outfit on, but it's
there's a guy who's called Skeptic Vet.
Yeah.
Skep Vet, yep.
That I wrote. He would attack, oh my God, he would just attack it. And if you see something happening and it's repeatedly happening, and there are cases that were at the biggest places in New England, spending $20,000, $30,000. And in 2 days, I get them to stop having diarrhea after 3-4 years. Yeah. How was that?
Well, that's just it. Don't you want to know how? Because I'm not a veterinarian.
It's not that hard.
I'm an accountant. So maybe that's the difference. They need to go to business school, because I'm an accountant. If someone tells me that, I want to know more. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, clearly it's witchcraft.
Well, I'm not a business person. You see them, when you see those animals changing, and the owners come in and they're like, how come my vet couldn't figure this out? I went there, I spent $25,000. All you did was 3 or 4 simple things and tested the dog for this immune endocrine imbalance, and the dog's fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, how, and our vets get mad at me.
Yeah.
They don't like it because they tell them there's nothing they can do but euthanize. And then 7 years later, they may still be alive. But even if they're a month after that and they're doing okay, they're not happy about it.
Yeah.
They're not happy about it because it made them feel like they were unprepared or didn't have the knowledge. And listen, I tell them, I know this much, but I keep trying to learn something. And, if I only know a half inch, how much do you know? They probably know 6 feet worth, but I'm always constantly studying conventional stuff and veterinary and, alternative. And the more I read, the more I don't know anything. I just feel like it's so, information is going so rapidly. So just as an example, in 2000, I've been protecting the microbiome for 30 years. In 2000, there was one research article on microbiome. Okay. And I didn't call it microbiome. I called it the gut flora at that point, right? But there was one article written with the word microbiome in it. 2017, there were 17,000 articles written on microbiome. In 2023, in PubMed, there were 250,000.
Wow.
articles.
Wow.
I've read a tiny fraction of those, right? So I know a little bit more, but the experience that I've had working with it and seeing these cases that are miracles, and that's the name of my book, The Miracle of the Microbiome, Saving the Lives of Dogs and Cats, because they were miracles. They were like, huh? Wait a second, that's not possible. It's not possible when somebody else says there's nothing you can do but euthanize, and in 2 days or 5 days, the dog's normal.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, makes me crazy.
Yeah.
And it makes me when the board says you can't say anything, you can't do that. Well, yes, I can. I'm not going to euthanize an animal that I think I can help. That completely goes against not even being a veterinarian, but being a human being,
Yeah, agreed.
right?
Well, this is so exciting. I
Have
love
we
this.
talked about how the Scap vet now works for a pharmaceutical company?
I think he always did. Yeah, always did. So, if they've got money invested in this and they are, trying to help these large companies make more money, and you look at what TV is, 49% of the ads are pharmaceuticals. You can't have freedom of speech.
They don't even tell you what the drug does. They just tell you
They don't
might
even barely
need
tell
the
you
They
what
drug.
just
it is.
dance around.
Yeah, they dance around and they
They're
tell you
all
you
like,
might need the drug. That's what
they're
blows
all
me away.
dancing and having a great time and surfing and,
Yeah.
and smiling and sometimes like the ones with GI issues, they're eating all the wrong foods. They're eating foods that I would not let anyone eat who has celiac disease or whatever. They're like chomping on that thing that they shouldn't be eating. But we've got to change. I think there's an opportunity here that you can educate the clients. But I can tell you about this, which is really pretty cool. I just got a text from from Gene Barnett. He's an engineer, and he's coming back. He's coming. We've been using it's advanced light devices, and it's a UVA, UVC, amber, blue, green, and red light using ozone therapy. And we call it, auto. It's major autohemotherapy with these light therapies. And he's come out. He sent me a text right before we started that he's come out with the unit that we're taking to the AHVMA, which is going to be great because I got one of his human units about, I want to say 5 years ago, and I've been using it. I love it. I love it. It's great. And so it's like, it's better than straight up ozone. It's just, but that's something your vet would have to do. But he's making this unit that is going to be able to it's got a smaller footprint. So it could be in every clinic. The other one is a much bigger machine. And often clinics don't have space for it.
And so that's where they take blood, like IV blood out of your dog. They mix it with the ozonated saline and pass it through the different light and then IV it back in.
Exactly. So Jonathan has one called the Chimp, which I helped him develop. And it's UVA, UVC, and UVA, B, and C. Okay. And this one from Advance the Light is UVA, UVC, amber, blue, green, and red light. And the human one he has far infrared and Rife technology as well. So I'm hoping that he's going to include this in the veterinary one. I don't know because it's much smaller. So I'm going to find out that information. But even if it doesn't have those, the one that I have doesn't have the other two things. And it works great because you're doing the photobiomodulation at the same time, which is these other light, the light sources that stimulate different parts of the cells, the immune system of the cell and the relationship between the different cells.
I remember when one of my dogs had cancer, that was one of the things that we did. And she,
great.
She had insulinoma, which was a really strange cancer for her to have. But she lived really well for like a year and a half,
Yeah, well, that was one of the cases I had was an insulinoma, and I was using a combination of ozone and bloodroot, and it was a Portuguese water dog, and the woman was wonderful. She was so wonderful, and before we started doing this, the dog had the insulinoma removed at Angel Memorial, and it came back, and so she came to me, and they told her that you can't do any more than that. We can't go in and do it again. This is the end. And we got about 18 months or more at that dog. And so she wanted to buy an entire system of ozone generator for the hospital and wanted to pay me to teach them. And they weren't interested.
Wow.
To pay me to teach them how to use an ozone generator and do these cases. And I thought, it was very slighted because I did my internship there. And I presented to them even before, this is before the fecal transplant. That was like almost 18 years ago, but 12 years ago, I presented fecal transplants to them. And I went there and gave a lecture. And, I always tell us that when I was an intern there in 78, 79, I was doing acupuncture, and I had to do my cases for IVIS because I took the acupuncture course in 75 and was the first woman to take the veterinary acupuncture course, but I had to submit my cases. So I did the cases there, and we had to do a senior presentation. And the senior presentation, I told them I want to do acupuncture. They go, we don't know what that is. And I said, well, I want to try to do some acupuncture. Find something else. So I didn't say, okay, I'll find something else. I said, no, I want to do acupuncture cases. So I took this dog, they were two dogs that I worked on, and they both had severe arthritis. We didn't have a lot of medications back then for treating arthritis. They were using aspirin, or they were using some kind of non-steroidal that just came out, but they would get gastric bleeding and the dogs would get really, really sick. So both of these dogs had that problem. So I remember the shepherd clearly. And so I asked the owner if they want me to try to do acupuncture, and they said, we never heard of it, but go ahead and do it. Right. And so I started doing it, and we had one room at Angel that we could put a long strip in the window. We could put a piece of cardboard in it if we were doing a euthanasia. So I would book the euthanasia room, and I'd put a piece of cardboard in, and I would do my acupuncture. And they came in for a splint change. So the owner brought in the bag and the splint, and I would put the splint on, wrap it all up. They would pay for a splint change. They would go in the car, take all the stuff off, put it in the bag. Next time, come in and say they came for a splint. So they were getting charged for splint change, and getting paid for splint change. So I did the case, and we were getting 80% improvement on the arthritis. People were thrilled,
Wow.
thrilled.
Oh, wow.
And I presented it in front of Angel, and you would have thought I amputated the wrong leg. They screamed and yelled at me. We told you not to do that. You didn't say I couldn't do it. You said find something else, and I didn't find something else I wanted to do it on. So I did it on this, and, but the people were thrilled. They were so happy not to have to give all these drugs because they couldn't manage the dog on the drugs. So anyway, but then 25 years later, I gave a lecture on, or more than that, 35 years later, gave a lecture on the fecal, and I told the audience, I said, 30 years later, before I gave a lecture on acupuncture, and they thought I was full of shit. Well, now I really am.
I love that. I hope you succeed with this, because I really want to see more veterinarians approaching holistic and, integrative practices. And I'm curious to know how many are afraid to step out of, what they're doing simply because of experiences like you're having. I mean, it's a really great way to scare
Kimberly,
people.
I think a lot of my friends are. We don't, and the reason I think I've been able to do it is my husband is a federal prosecutor, and he can't understand how they can keep doing this. It's like, and he's been to the board meetings, and he thinks it's absolute kangaroo court. He's been in the major cases. He did the Boston bombing case. He did Rwanda war crimes. He did, Bosnia war crimes. And he's like looking at this thing, and it's like he thinks it's kangaroo court.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you stand up when you truly, in your heart and your soul, and the animal is better, or can get better, and they will find something you did that will, make you look terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So they've taken my cases, and all these animals should have been euthanized. And I had other choices, and I think I should be able to give other choices.
Yeah.
They're going to highlight something on it that, this one dog that bit 3 people, then bit one of my technicians, and then bit the owner on the face and ripped her face across. And I had been, for years, dogs that had been, were supposed to be euthanized because of fighting, or because of, biting people and stuff. But the people loved them. They didn't want to put them down. But what do? Take every tooth out of their mouth. And I did that in the beginning. I took it took hours and hours and banging and bang. And so I got a dental, surgical dental file, and just file the teeth down. And so they wouldn't have points that they wouldn't dig in and pull out. And these dogs lived their lives out, never could hurt anybody badly. And so this person, it was, it was such the person who had the dog was a pathological liar. And so how do you defend yourself when somebody lies?
Yeah.
And so we try to, and, they go after you. And it is, in that case, I really would love to have a whole podcast on the case. And part of it, the reason I hadn't is the woman is not stable.
Yeah.
So, but the dog survived, the dog lived, and it should have been euthanized because in Massachusetts, there's a 3-bite rule. You bite 3 people and you're done. And he bit 5, and 1 landed the person in the hospital with plastic surgery. And it was her, right? So and what she's saying, you got to kill him. And then, no, you can't kill him. I love him. No, you got to kill him. And I'm like, let's just file the teeth down, And she didn't take care of it. Afterwards, you have to put ozone on them and keep it. And he was doing great for 3 weeks, doing wonderful. And then, she threatened if she didn't get a raise, she was going to leave. And we said, fine, And then she threatened she was driving drunk on the Mass Pike and texting and said, I'm driving drunk on the Mass Pike. So if I spell things wrong, it's because I'm drunk. And I want to kill your hospital manager, who was my daughter. So they wouldn't listen to any of that, but they would totally listen to the fact that the dog had to end up having 2 teeth removed because they got infected.
Wow.
But they wouldn't listen to they threw all that out, all the evidence of that out. And, it's really evil. I mean, that they would search out the littlest thing and try to find that and then accuse you of that.
It seems so counterproductive because I think as a nation, we've proven, year over year that the pet industry is the most profitable industry. It's recession proof, that people love their animals. People have chosen not to have children and would prefer to have animals. People would rather just be at home with their animals. We are paying so much for our animals. I mean, my dogs have 2 freezers and a fridge that's dedicated to them. I was just taking
I have like 7 freezers full of shit.
I mean, if I had more space, I would. I mean, sometimes my partner will come home and tell me about a restaurant auction, and I will drop everything and go and check and see what they have because you can get so many great things. I spent the past 2 weeks making bone broth because I have friends who, are homesteaders and they save the organs and just the random things.
Yeah, no, I mean, getting all this stuff, there's so many, and that's where having everybody share ideas.
Yeah.
So we're getting on a lot of different. I don't know how long we could talk. How long can make this into 5 episodes.
But I think you're right, though. I think just the fact that you shared, just having everyone share their knowledge, because everything that I've learned, I didn't learn from my vet. I learned from meeting people on social media, meeting people in my community, and getting ideas from what other people are doing. And so that's why I share what I'm doing so other people can get ideas. And the more we share this information and collaborate and work with each other, I think
absolutely.
that's what until the veterinary community as a whole becomes more open-minded, that's what we have, because not all of us have access to a holistic.
How do we do that? So, I think having a writing campaign to the American Veterinary Medical Association, I think a huge writing campaign or change.org to them that we want, I love my profession. I love being a veterinarian but we got to see all sides. You just can't have only one way of doing it.
I would love to see a book with stories, like some of the stories that you told today. I would love to see, or a website that just has story after story of, I was doing all of these things and then I tried this.
Why don't you help me do it? I'll give you all the stories.
Because that's so many people
need to do that. We need to, and have everybody give their stories. We have, at the American, so where do you live?
Washington.
Baltimore.
On the West Coast.
Oh, West Coast, Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
The real Washington.
The American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, which is an organization of holistic vets that is the umbrella group for the veterinary botanical, the chiropractors, the acupuncturists. So our meeting is in West Palm Beach on the 5th through the 6th through the 9th.
I'll be there.
Yep.
You're going, Erin? Okay. So maybe this is a place to do this, to think about getting ready for this, right? So to know that we need the stories, we need to connect these DVMs, VMDs with the mainstream Veterinary Medical Association. But the Veterinary Medical Association is going to resent it that these people are gathering together and getting people to write letters. I want my profession to be respected. I want my profession to be appreciated. And years ago, veterinarians were very high on the respect list. When you looked at professions, they were one of the highest, if not the highest. I can't say that now. People are not trusting them because they've done enough reading. Do I need to give these 7 vaccines every year? No. Right?
Yeah.
Do I need to put all this flea and tick stuff on my animals? No. Do I need to feed this prescription diet when there's other things available? No. So when they're telling you all this stuff because they are told to tell that stuff, can you have someone who, can't we have an open conversation, this collaboration of trying to find a better solution? And this is where I want to keep using the spectrum of care and utilizing this spectrum of care, that this is all part of it. Now, a veterinarian doesn't have to be trained in acupuncture to recommend it. They don't have to be trained in ozone to recommend it. They don't have to be trained in chiropractic to know that they could do that instead of back surgery. So they should know these things. And if they don't, shame on them. Because if I did not recommend for an animal coming in with lymphoma to do chemo, they would say you're misrepresenting. But if somebody else said there's nothing you can do but chemo and never tell them about the other ways to possibly support cancer, that should be wrong too.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
We need to have this open. So whether or not there could be the pet parents and the pet owners and advocates and the holistic vets not joining together against the AVMA, but to say, we have a voice too.
Yeah.
There's way more of us now than there were 20 years ago. And we want change. We want good stuff. We want to be able to have conversations. And right now, veterinarians are so overworked and exhausted, and they're burning out, and they're committing suicide, and there's so much, stress on them. I don't want to add more stress. I want them to have another option so they don't have to euthanize something.
Yeah.
Compassion fatigue is a huge part of it, is just they can't afford it, you euthanize it. And you have to rationalize it in your head. You did something good for the animal. Well, I can't rationalize in my head. If I know 7 other things I could do for that animal and I have to euthanize it, I can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking up, for never backing down. There are so many people who are on your side and rooting for you, and we're really grateful for your time and for all that you've done for our animals over these years.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I think what Kimberly said is we can collaborate.
Yeah.
Let's all try to do the best that we can so that we have the best opportunities to learn from each other and help have the animal heal. And of course, make things better for everyone.
100%. Mic drop.
Yeah, this is great. Perfect way to end.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome, guys.
Bye, guys.